All right, so for the last few years, my house has slowly been converting to organic food along with many others across the nation. And this usually bugs me because we're paying about 20% extra for these things, and I don't even like it that much. So I've done actually like about 2 years of research on this before because, as I said, for many years I've been affected by it. And combined with the last 2 weeks of research, I've come up with a conclusion. And I'll explain to you today why organic foods are overpriced. So today we'll be talking about the introduction of organic foods, the benefits of organic versus conventional, and then I'll be talking about the price difference between the two and the switch to organic nowadays. So I'm going to start with where it began. So in an article by History of Organic Farming in the United States, it stated that J.I. Rodale, that guy right there, he began the organic farming method in about 1940 at a place called the Rodale Institute of Organic Farming, which is right here. It stayed relatively low-key until about the 1970s, where America started becoming more environmentally friendly. But even then, that was barely anything compared to the switch we made in 2000. So now that we know where organic farming began, we can now talk about the health benefits between organic compared to conventional. So before we get into the benefits of those, however, we're going to find out how we identify organic labels. So the first thing that you can do for organic is have the 100% organic certified, and that has a USDA seal of approval on it. Next one, we have the just organic, where it's about 90% organic material, and you cannot actually have the USDA in it. The next one is going to be made with organic ingredients, and that's at least 7% of organic ingredients are included in the food. And the last one, the fourth one, is less than 7%, and that's pretty much like nobody's going to want to buy that. And something that markets like to use is called all natural, but natural is not actually mentioned at all by the FDA. So even like a bag of Cheetos, where it obviously has artificial things, can call itself natural. So do not confuse natural with organic. So I went into now that we know that, we can go into the health benefits, the actual benefits of it. So now that we know how to identify those, the first study I found was by the Stanford University of Medicine, and that's going to be about the price, or the health, the taste differences of organic versus conventional. The first, they identified that many studies have shown no significant taste difference between organic and conventional fruits. And the second study I researched was on that as well. And they then talked about how, once again, it's no taste difference. So then I researched the health benefits on the two. It was conducted by Stanford again, which they said no consistent differences were seen in the vitamin content of organic products, and the only difference was one nutrient, which was phosphorus. And actually, the phosphorus difference isn't very much, because the only reason phosphorus is going to hurt you is if you have an allergy to it, which very few people have. Now, a claim that many organic crusaders like to use is that organic has less pesticides on them, which is actually true, is proven by research from the American College of Physicians. And they found that organic products only had 7% residue, whereas conventional had 38% residue. And that claim doesn't necessarily make it true that organic is better for you than conventional, because in a study by UC Berkeley, they stated that you find half of the natural chemicals are actually carcinogens. So just because it has less pesticides doesn't mean it's healthier for you. So after we understand the benefits, or the lack thereof, of organic foods, we can talk about the price difference, whether it's overpriced or not. So there were plenty of studies I could research on this topic, and the first one I found was by the Maine Organic Farmers Association, in which it declared the mean cost for organic items were up to 68% higher than non-organic. And I just have some graphs here to show that these price differences are actually very clearly displayed. Like this one, you can see on the left how this is all the organic, versus on the right, which is conventional, it's usually about 50% cheaper. And with the milk, it's actually extremely larger, which is proven right here also. This is the conventional and this is the organic. These price differences are massive. And there were many more articles I read afterwards that all prove the same thing, that we pay more for organic than we do for conventional. So I was wondering to myself, why is it that we always pay more for organic? So I went to research and found that Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations actually states that production costs for organic foods are typically higher due to the greater amount of labor input. So these people, these laborers, are putting a lot more effort into something that isn't necessarily healthier for you, and you still have to pay more. So in the same FAQ, they stated marketing and distribution are inefficient and costs are due to relatively small volumes. So since there's such a small output from organic farms, we pay more because there's less demand, or there's less, you have to put more work into it. So after all that research, I wanted to find out how large the organic farming industry has become over the last 2 decades. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a massive switch to organic foods in the 2000s. And in an article by the NBC News, they reported since 2000, the organic market has been growing by up to 20% each year, compared to conventional growth of only 3%. So I have here, the blue is the amount of money that they've been gaining, and the red is the growth that they've been gaining over the years. So as you can see, starting here in 2005, they had this 20% increase, but it's slowly been plateauing over the last few years. So to put a dollar amount on that growth, I found research from foodnavigatorusa.com that stated in 2012, the total size of the organic industry in the US was about 30 billion, out of the world's market of just 81 billion. And I have another one here that's stated how large the farmers have grown and organic stuff like that. So the US actually consumes 1/3 of the world's market of organic foods, and that was pretty big to me. So today we've been talking about the history of organic food, the health benefits between organic and conventional, and then the price difference of the two, and when we made the switch. And to answer the question of why do we pay so much more for organic foods, the answer to that is I have no idea. That's it.
Nicole, are you here? You're not here, are you? Not here. Grace, you were missing the other day when it was time to do your oral evaluation. Would you like to do the oral evaluation for Alex's speech?
Sure.
Okay, offer a few comments, that would be great.
I enjoyed your speech very much. It seems like you had a lot of information. I think that your delivery was not as solid as it could have been, but it was very knowledgeable about what you were talking about. It just felt like you were uncomfortable delivering your information. Like maybe you hadn't, like there was one point where where it seemed like you were confused about which section of your speech you were in, and I think that is not as strong. It doesn't make your speech as strong as it could have been, but it seemed like you were very invested in the topic. It seemed like you were very like you were interested in your topic and you were interested in discussing it with us, and I appreciated that.
All right, thank you. Alex, the personal story at the beginning I thought was fine. It gives you some credibility to talk about the issue. Your purpose statement was very clear. There's a solid preview. It does sound like you have a lot of supporting points, and if there's a way to condense that, that might be better. because it does sound like it's a little intimidating at the beginning of the speech. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of sections I think you could probably lose and it wouldn't hurt you much. Maybe just use them in background information in the introduction rather than have them be secondary points in the speech. You defined the difference between organic and natural. I thought that that was reasonable. I heard very consistent citation of your sources in the presentation. That's excellent. There's usually good data that's being presented on those particular points. Sometimes I think you could do a little bit more to make it interesting and involving and consider the audience that you're speaking to. But everything for the most part was clear when you were explaining it. It's topically organized, and as I said before, I think there were a couple of points that were probably extraneous. That whole opening section about where it originated, that just seemed like it was a place filler. It doesn't really seem to be doing anything in this speech. It's certainly not talking about the cost or why people do those particular things. Like I said, maybe just background. I did hear transitions in the presentation. I like that. I thought it was very clear each time you moved to a new idea. The visuals, the green is a good choice as a background because you're talking about organic, and that sounds really green. The problem is that the color of the font doesn't pop out when you've got the black font against it, unless it's really big. I think you probably needed to have something like yellow or something so it stands out a little bit more. That's a little bit of a problem. And then you have some good graphics, some bar graphs and line graphs that you're using, but you're sticking 3 of them on a slide at a time. They end up being a little bit smaller than you might want them to be, and they're distracting from each other. I think you want to do one at a time. And there are a couple of them where you didn't need to have 3. One would have been fine, and kept it relatively simple because it explained a couple of things at once. So a little bit of editing there on those kinds of issues I think would be helpful. Your delivery, I think you do a solid job. For the most part, you're talking to us. You do have to look down a little bit, but that wasn't a big deal. Sometimes your energy level could be a little bit higher. I like the opening that you had, and I kind of like the sort of, it's a little bit dry humor that you've got at the beginning about, my family's doing this and I actually don't know why, that kind of thing, and I like that. And I like that you come back to that at the end. If you could skip the tagline at the end, the Porky Pig exit, that would be great, because I think you finished up, so why is it that people pay more for this? I really can't say. And that's all you need to say. You don't need to then add the that's all, folks, at the end. All right? Thank you.